You know, between the giant blimp and the jet shaped like his favorite card, I'm just starting to think that Kaiba might be a bit of a narcissist. Yes, more than you. Number 22. Fine Weather Rising Hallelujah, the first opening of GX by Jinto. For those keeping track, this is also the first GX opening in general to make it onto this list, and therefore my least favorite of the season. And yet, it's still relatively high, all things considered, and I kind of wish it wasn't. Yeah, this one is absolutely a guilty pleasure for me because it is just so all over the place in terms of its visuals and music. The latter switches between what sounds like rock and hip-hop at the drop of a dime, and thus is nothing short of chaotic, not helped by the fact that the lyrics are all about sailing the high seas and not so much about a card game. Yeah, the deck they talk about here I'm pretty sure isn't a card deck. I mean, I think other than one random filler duel, there's not much of an ocean theme to this particular series. Meanwhile, the visuals, while certainly really well animated, has a ton of cuts to the point that it does become kind of disorienting after a while. So, just by my usual sensibilities, I really should be disliking this a lot more than I am, but because it's so insane and random, it kind of loops back around to being amazing. Every time I watch this, I can't help but put on a bit of a smile or even chuckle though at just how fast things are flying by on the screen. And to be fair, this opening was kind of reflective of GX during its first major arcs, where they were still coming off the ending of the OG and were unsure of the direction they want to take it. So in that sense, I do have to respect this throw everything at the wall and see what sticks attitude. And again, while it does have a few too many cuts, they also do a good job showing off the signature cards of all of the major characters. Of course, Judai's E-heroes get the most attention, but damn does the Cyber End Dragon look imposing, as it should. It was one of my favorite cards back in the day. Thus, while the later openings of the season are going to rank much higher as GX found its identity, I also won't deny the charm of this one and its almost headache-inducing randomness.
Hallelujah! Holy sh**! Where's the Tylenol?
Number 21. Haivutai, the second opening of Sevens by Browbeat. By default, this is my favorite opening of this series, as they only had two, but I do like it significantly more than the first. While that opening also had a bit of a random charm, not unlike the previous entry on this list, I gotta say, I much prefer the direction of this one because it is just pure hype. As while this is a little chaotic in its own right, which is kind of an inherent trait of the season, it's a little more organized and does a good job showing the general personalities of the show's massive cast, as well as even their allegiances. Little touches like a character's expressions or quirks can get across a lot within a limited time frame. From there, we just get some awesome shots of everyone's signature monsters, and the most significant variances to this opening. Yeah, while there were some little changes here and there across the different versions of this opening, this part had completely different sequences for the former and latter parts of the series. Personally, I prefer the former because I like more 2D as opposed to just all 3D, as well as just some nostalgic connection. And oh yeah, we haven't even really talked about the best part of it all. And again, if we were just judging by songs alone, then Haivutai might be actually more in the top 5. Still, either sequence does a good job showing off these cards, especially as the song just goes all in. The lyrics start off mundane enough by just describing a photic sneeze reflex that almost all of us experience, and then kind of cleverly building off of that by saying that we should follow impulses like that towards our goals and dreams. Then, of course, once they reach the high point of the song, we get that aforementioned signature monster sequence with all of their appearances being perfectly timed with the melody. It's a fantastic sequence, and even though I do wish they could have incorporated a little more actual storytelling into this opening, like showing a few more of the major plot beats of this part of the series, it still gets across a ton of personality, and again, it's just pure hype that puts you in a bit of, oh shoot, I still can't remember that word. Number 20. Go For It, the second opening of Reigns by Kimeru. Yep, 2/3 of this season's openings were done by the same artist, and for good reason. He's damn talented, to the point that his usage of English kind of works here. I mean, at least his makes grammatical sense. And they certainly match up well with this part of the series with the introduction of Homura, aka Soulburner. Following the events of the first part of the series, it's clear that Yusaku was seeking more camaraderie beyond just his smart mouth AI and source of food, which is well told through these lyrics and especially the visuals. Again, just little touches like Yusaku's changing expression and Aoi looking away from him, probably from knowing that she's gonna become one of the biggest jobbers of this entire franchise, and then Homura coming in with the biggest damn bro hug ever. Just that alone elevated this opening for me personally, but we also got some good subtle bits like Onizuka ditching his ring gear, and then just about everything between Bowman and Haru. But hey, who gives a crap about good character moments that analyze their flaws and struggles? Where's the action with the card games on cyber surfboards with missiles? Yeah, it isn't as snappy as on motorcycles, but still cool and really well animated. And again, they took full advantage of this song's melody and high points to really highlight the best parts. Granted, I don't think we got quite enough of the actual duels, and of course the monsters, which are mostly just relegated to Yusaku and Homura, with the former getting to show off all of his aces, and the latter just getting a brief glimpse of his heat Leo. Protagonist privilege much? Still, this does rank a little higher for good character work, another great Kimeru song, and most importantly, some bromance.
Bros before hoes.
Number 19. Believe, Believe, the first opening of Arc 5 by Chotokyu. Yeah, good luck getting that earworm out of your head tonight. Hell, I'd say about 90% of the song is ridiculously hummable, which makes it easily one of the most memorable of this entire franchise. Though even if it wasn't as catchy as it is, I also just love how unique this melody is. Starting off with that aforementioned upbeat earworm, we then transition to a really nice little dramatic build-up as we go through Yuya's stock pendulum summon animation, and then just kind of gloss over the antagonist of this first part of the series. Yeah, we'll get to that in just a bit. And then it becomes even more upbeat with the titular Believe, Believe lyrics that just get you hooked. I think that little cooldown in between just kind of adds to the excitement of Yuya riding on his kind of scary looking CG dragon. Yeah, just ignore that thing, and hey, look at the Samba hippos. Nah, I mean, as silly as it is, this is easily the most fun and memorable part of the opening that just makes you feel good, because clearly everyone's just having fun in the bright neon lights of the Smile World, providing us with some nice colors as all of Yuya's monsters fly by. Though that also kind of highlights my big problem with this opening. While this is probably one of my favorite songs of the franchise, it's also lacking severely in the monsters, as it only features Yuya's cards, even though we got to see all of the major players of this part of the series, including the main rival. And in a card game anime, you kind of need to see other cards in order to establish the obstacles the protagonists have to overcome. Without just that basic element, it doesn't quite build up anticipation for this series, in spite of everything else being great, which is a bit of a shame. I mean, this still does break into the top 20 because those elements are so damn good, but I do wish I could rank it just a little higher. Still, even though this opening doesn't quite make me a believer, this won't be the last time we see this band on this list. Number 18. Wild Drive, the third opening of Duel Monsters by Masato Nagai. Finally, we reached the first opening of the kind of, sort of OG of this franchise. Don't worry, that opening will have its place on this list, and it's unquestionably pretty banging. As hinted at in the intro, this is an opening that fully embraces the insanity of this little card game franchise for kids. And I absolutely love it for that, as this has one of my favorite sequences of the entire franchise, with just this little bit of Kaiba pointing up at his big stupid blimp taken to the skies. Which, little known fact, that thing is actually filled up with all of the hot air from his absolute smugness. I mean, the dude is a businessman, so he doesn't understand the importance of fuel efficiency. From there, we got a nice sequence of our protagonists showing off their aces, the Dark Magician Girl and Jinzo. Yeah, I think it should actually be Dark Magician and Red Eyes rather than their shiny new cards, but whatever, more personal preference. And I really do like this bit of the non-dueling side characters appearing over them, showing who's the closest allies to Yugi and Jonochi respectively. From there, we got some cool shots of their quarterfinal opponents and their ace monsters, or at least the ones that can best fit on this screen. I mean, I'm pretty sure Ishizu barely used Mudora and was more about her trap cards, which she really should have won her duel with, but I digress. Because we then got the best part of this opening, which became a bit of a requirement for all of the Duel Monsters openings after the first, awesome shots of the God cards. And personally, these are my favorite sequences involving them, as they really get across the imposing nature of these gods and all that. As for the song itself, it is quite good. I mean, going by just the lyrics, it's kind of your standard character heading off on a grand adventure sort of song that would probably work well with just about any shonen protagonist anime. Still, the artist has clearly put his all into it with some very energetic beats. If this song just had a little more substance to it, then this might actually rank a little higher, but still, it's a hell of a way to introduce this series to this list. Number 17. Wonder Wings, the 6th opening of Zio by Diamond Yukai. Talk about coming a long way, both for this series and its opening. Seriously, thank God that first opening would not define what else we would be getting from the series musically. I mean, personally, while these softer beats aren't my cup of tea, I can't deny that these lyrics match perfectly with this part of the series, as they were essentially highlighting the final battles with the Barians and the conflicting feelings of Yuma, Astral, and Shark. And even in a nice little bit of synergy, they also included words from the actual show. Granted, I don't like to be reminded of the absolute BS that is Shining Draws, but again, let's focus on the opening and all of these monsters. Like, seriously, even though this is near the end of the series and therefore the cast has ballooned massively, they still managed to focus on the actually important characters of this arc, Yuma, Kaito, and the Barians, and all of their ace cards. This is why I put so much emphasis on these monsters appearing, as it really does help to hype this up as a massive season-ending conflict, and as we just get to see all of these extravagant creatures literally flying by. And sure, while a lot of Yuma's numbers would be barely seen, aside from Utopia of course, it was still at least nice to see them off one last time. And in general, it's just a really well animated and put together opening that, in spite of my issues with this final arc of the series, 1000, it certainly lives up to its title of being truly wondrous. Number 16. With the Wind, the first opening of Raids by Hiroaki Tami Tominaga. Yeah, not too surprisingly, my favorite Raids opening is the original, if only because every time I hear it, I end up associating it with another one of my favorite anime openings of all time. And while this song isn't quite as epic as that, though really what can be, it's still very exhilarating, and in my opinion, fits best with Rain's more cyberpunk aesthetic. It just gets you really excited for all of the needless complications of Master Rule 4, but again, we're just looking at the opening and its pre-visuals and music. Speaking of which, the animation does a fantastic job matching really well with the lyrics that are explaining at least the concepts and mechanics of this first part of the series. In particular... Now that is some good synchronization without the need of motorcycles. We also got some good visual storytelling, as we got to see the lives of all the major characters of this part of the series. Yusaku of course got the most significant visuals, with this bit of him in the neon-lit Times Square looking place that he seems to show absolutely no interest in, possibly symbolizing his wariness of the real world before transitioning into his playmaker persona where he was clearly more at home. This of course then led into a parade of monsters that wasn't overrun by code talkers, and instead just one card, and another that would soon be banned. And thankfully, we also got some good run-ins from Aoi and Onizuka being able to show off their criminally underutilized cards, seriously, Trickstar's deserve better, before ending on a good old rival confrontation with Revolver, and everyone taking on the form of a symbolic bird as they were all experiencing the freedom of their little virtual reality. Honestly, there's nothing really much to complain about this one, other than some minor nitpicks, like they could have shown a little bit more of the Knights of Hanoi and a couple of frozen frames. But other than that, this is an excellent opening that effectively gets across the feeling of flying free and Link summon spamming like there's no tomorrow. Number 15. 99%, the second opening of GX by Bull. It's worth knowing that this was easily the longest lasting opening of this season, running from about the mid part of the Sacred Beast arc until the ending of the Society of Light arc. As a result, it does have more than a few different versions, and yeah, we're just gonna stick with the original, as later versions were mostly just glorified clip shows, other than some admittedly funny cut-ins featuring Kronos and Napoleon. But yeah, this version of the opening was mostly meant to reflect the events of the Sacred Beast arc, and thankfully, unlike many anime openings really, there wasn't anything too spoilery, as much of this stuff had already happened by the time this opening started to be used, so if anything, stuff like this just served as some really well-animated reminders of the past. And what was kind of being spoiled only really served to build anticipation for future events, in particular, the arrival of the beasts. And yeah, while they're mostly just cheap knockoffs of the Egyptian god cards, they were at least presented as very imposing with just these few brief flashes at the beginning of the opening, and later when they were coming out from under Duel Academy like true creatures from hell. This whole sequence, by the way, was animated by Junpei Ogawa, who also gave us some of the best parts of the previous GX entry, and is currently giving us some of the few bright spots in the fight scenes from Delicious Party. Hell, this is one of the few openings where I can't compliment the parts where there isn't actually a lot of animation, as everyone is at least drawn dynamically, and more importantly, with whole groups of their key monsters, which just looks so damn impressive. Of course, Manjome gets the best lineup with his Ojamas, even though he doesn't seem to realize it himself. Meanwhile, the song itself is another really damn catchy and exciting tune that matches well with the visuals in parts. Yeah, the actual lyrics here tell the story of a depressed person being helped out by someone close to them to leave their house and enjoy the outside world. Clearly, this song was not designed for GX, or at least not this part of the series. Yeah, this would have worked pretty well for the final arc of the show when Judai went full emo, but in this part of the series where it was arguably at its goofiest, no. Though really, that's my only minor complaint, as it's still a really good song, where we got to see a ton of the protagonists and antagonists alike. While it doesn't quite achieve 100% because it doesn't quite match with this part of the series, it still gets you really pumped before things get a little depressing. Number 14. Unbreakable Heart, the third opening of Zio by Hideaki Takatori. Now we've reached some of my second favorite openings of the series. And more than a little credit for this one should go to the artist of the song, whose tunes might sound familiar to some Super Sentai fans. Seriously, how do you make an ad for the Animal Planet sound so epic? But yeah, while Takatori isn't my personal favorite Sentai singer, as I prefer artists who just go all in, I'm not gonna deny he has a great voice, exuding a soft elegance that works well during this calm before the storm part of the series. Yeah, don't forget this meme factory is just around the corner. But until then, this opening does an excellent job introducing the Barians and the threat they posed against the protagonists, who I'm sure will be all working together by the end of this. Nah, but seriously, it is nice to see the camaraderie of these three, especially as the lyrics describe a hero standing up again after a significant loss. Add in a nice little chorus in the background, and you get a pretty uplifting little tune in between all of the literal chaos. Again, this is just another opening where I can't really point out any significant flaws and can only put it lower due to my own personal taste in music. Though, and all of the female designs are awful, but that's zeal for you. Still, this is a nice little tune that also has the honor of introducing the best damn character in this whole damn series. Yeah, Shingetsu just has such a sweet smile that's hiding an even better one underneath. Number 13, Last Train, the second opening of 5Ds by Not Lamp. Good lord, this opening could not have come any sooner after the drag that was the original. Granted, it made total sense to hold off on this until the start of the Dark Signers arc, because this thing really encapsulates one of my favorite arcs of the franchise. First of all, the lyrics are pretty much spot on for describing either Jack or Yusei's arcs throughout this series, as they do describe someone going out on a journey to the great unknown. I would say they match Jack just a little more, as they also describe someone who's now realizing how suffocating his current worldview was, which Jack would experience a lot over the course of this particular arc. But whatever the case, it could also be said it's reflective of the two characters' dreams converging on one another, along with the rest of the soon-to-be Team 5Ds as they deal with the threat of the Dark Signers. Said threat is established pretty epically right off the bat with the recreation of the inciting incident of the series, the Zero Reverse. From there, we got a very symbolic transition of Yusei's D-Will being powered by the same momentum his father was researching, as to say he was carrying on his legacy. We then got some cool shots of the two main dragons of the show, along with a bunch of other monsters and characters. And yeah, it's probably worth bringing up that this is another opening with more than one version, though this one has some very significant variations rather than just obscuring monsters that have yet to debut. In this case, they decided to wisely hold back on certain plot elements that I also won't spoil here. Though I will say, this little bit of comedy of Carly complaining about the Red Dragon Archfiend almost crashing into her gets a lot more tragic later. But yeah, still major points for putting in so much effort into these sequences, as in either version of this opening, they just look equally fantastic. I especially love this part of Yusei readying his D-Wheel, and it synced perfectly with the building tempo of the song. It's yet another opening that does a really good job selling us on that particular meme that I think we've said more than enough at this point. Number 12, Light of Hope, the fifth opening of Arc 5 by Unknown Number. We'll wrap up this video with a mostly positive note as we show scenes of an apocalyptic setting. I mean, it's certainly a good representation of the season in more ways than one, but still, I love this foggy effect over the ruins of the Exceeds dimension that really sells us on the sense of destruction and direness of the situation. In general, this whole opening just does a great job selling us on how the war between the dimensions has affected all of its residents, with even the Yuto-possessed Yuya feeling for it, right before we got a nice sequence showing how their dragons formed into one awesome, but really damn hard to summon monster. In the meantime, the other two dragon boys were going at it in a nicely done sequence by Hidekazu Ebina. I always love their work, whether it's for this, FGO, or to see Fujiwara cry. The dude just has a knack for that. From there, we did get some simpler sequences that still got across some strong visual storytelling, like Leo's stupid plans for the Dimension Girls, before we got another good sequence from Junpei Ogawa, this time featuring cards on inline skates. Yeah, again, it just doesn't roll off the tongue as nicely as that other thing. However, the thing that really puts it high on this list is of course the song itself. While probably not made for this show as far as I can tell, the lyrics here do pretty much match perfectly with the visuals and just the general themes of Arc 5. Granted, that might be due to the fact that they're just generic enough that they could fit in with any shonen anime. I mean, I think Light of Hope sounds even too cheesy for Danganronpa. But there's also some great lyrics about duality and overcoming one's inner demons that, yeah, very much apply to Yuya, especially as he tries to live up to the ideals of what an entertainment duel is. Thus, once we get to the latter half of the opening, when he's surrounded by a performapal carnival, it's honestly really damn touching, and again matches perfectly with the lyrics that are now expositing about how tomorrows are formed through happiness and not strife. That plus ending on the lines, I do believe in myself, and this really does feel like everything I was looking for in Believe. Thus, while this might not be my favorite opening of this particular series, it manages to summarize the best elements of Arc 5, and is easily better than something else with the Light of Hope in its title. And that's all the time we have for today, though do look forward to the final part where we'll cover our top 11 Yu-Gi-Oh! Openings. In between though, we're planning on doing a bit of a Precure / Super Sentai related video on the main channel, or just on this channel if you're watching on Odyssey, which by the way, would appreciate subscribing. And until then though, for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I think I'm just gonna take a little trip on this blimp. Jeez, and they say musk is full of it.